April 14, 1935. Sunday. A day that went down in history as Black Sunday. Early afternoon. The sky over Oklahoma and Kansas is still clear. Farmers are heading to church. Children are playing in yards. An ordinary spring day. And then someone notices a line on the horizon. Thin, black, strange. It grows. In 10 minutes it's no longer a line, it's a wall. Black, dense, 1¼ miles high. It's moving at 60 miles per hour, covering everything in its path. This wasn't a cloud. The topsoil from millions of acres of farms, turned to dust, was flying through the air. People dropped everything and ran into houses. Closed windows, doors, stuffed cracks with wet rags. But the dust got in everywhere. It was in the air, in lungs, on tongues. Visibility dropped to zero. At noon it became dark as the deepest night. People suffocated in their own homes. Livestock died right in their pens, their nostrils and lungs clogged with dirt. Crops, the pitiful remnants that still remained, disappeared in minutes, buried under layers of sand several inches thick. The Dust Bowl. The greatest ecological catastrophe in American history. 10 years of drought, dust storms, and starvation. From 1930 to 1940, more than 300 dust storms hit the Great Plains. Millions of people lost everything. 2.5 million people fled the region, the largest internal migration in U.S. history. But here's what's strange. Some farmers stayed. And not just stayed, they survived. Moreover, their land didn't turn into desert. Their families ate when neighbors starved. Their livestock stayed alive. Their homes stood when others were abandoned. How? What did they know that everyone else didn't? They did one thing. One simple thing that everyone else ignored. And this thing saved them. Today I'm going to tell you this story. Because what worked then works now. And it could save you tomorrow. Let me tell you about two farmers. Their farms were in western Kansas, in Finney County, 3 miles apart. The first, John Miller. Traditional farmer. He has 500 acres of land planted with wheat. Good land, bought by his father at the turn of the century. John works the way his father worked, and his grandfather before him. Plow deep, plant thick, pray for rain. The second, Frank Anderson. Same kind of farmer, same plot, 500 acres. But Frank visited California in the 1920s, saw how they grow alfalfa there. Read articles by agronomists about crop rotation and soil-conserving crops. Neighbors thought he was odd. 1930. Beginning of catastrophe. January, February, March no rain. April not a drop. May dry. By June the wheat in John's fields is yellowing and dying. He looks at the sky every day, waiting for clouds. They don't come. What does John do? The same as everyone. He takes the plow and plows deeper. Simple logic. If you plant seeds deeper, maybe they'll find moisture. He plants more wheat. Hopes next year will be luckier. Takes a loan from the bank for seeds and tractor fuel. What does Frank do? He stops. Looks at his dying fields and makes a strange decision. He stops plowing. Completely stops. Instead, he starts planting what neighbors laugh at. Alfalfa. Clover. Sudan grass. Those are feed crops, neighbors say. What, you planning to raise livestock? You won't make money on feed. Frank nods and keeps planting. 1931. The rains haven't returned. Drought intensifies. John's wheat dies for the third year in a row. When the wind picks up, the topsoil loose, plowed, stripped of roots starts lifting into the air. First small dust storms. John sees his land literally flying away. What does he do? Plows again. Tries to restore soil structure. But the more he plows, the looser the earth becomes, the easier for wind to carry it away. Frank's fields? They are green. Not bright green, not lush but green. Alfalfa grows, though slowly. Sudan grass holds on. When wind hits, the soil on his field stays in place. Plant roots a dense network underground, don't let it rise. 1933. Dust storms become regular. Every 2 to 3 weeks the sky darkens with dust. Harvests in the region fall by 70 to 80%. John is desperate. He's owed the bank for 3 years now. The family eats poorly, potatoes, bread, sometimes chicken. They have no garden. Who thought about a garden when you could grow wheat? Frank has a garden. Big 1.25 acres. They grow the same crops as in the fields. Alfalfa, amaranth, Jerusalem artichoke, clover. Plus regular vegetables. Squash, beans, cabbage. His family eats varied. Not richly, but steadily. 1935. Black Sunday. That very storm I told you about at the beginning. It destroys the last hopes. John's fields bare, dead earth. Not a blade of grass. Only sand and rocks. He looks at all this and understands. The end. The bank will send notice in a month. No money. No harvest coming. He gathers his family, packs belongings into a truck and leaves for California, joining the stream of hundreds of thousands of similar refugees. Frank stays. After Black Sunday he goes out to his fields. The top layer of plants died broken by wind, covered with sand. But when he digs with a shovel, he sees. Roots are alive. Dense, thick, going deep. Soil holds. 2 weeks later alfalfa gives new shoots. Life continues. What's the difference? What did Frank know that John didn't? He planted deep-rooted plants. Sounds ridiculously simple, right? Almost disappointingly banal. But stay with me, because behind this simplicity lies a brilliant understanding of how nature works. Let's talk about roots. Wheat, the main crop of the Great Plains in the 1920s and 30s, has a root system 12 to 20 inches deep. Maximum 24 in good conditions. That's shallow. Very shallow. When regular rains come, that's enough moisture stays in the topsoil, roots absorb it, everything works. But when rains stop, and during the Dust Bowl they stopped for months, sometimes for a year, the top 20 inches of soil dry completely. Wheat roots can't reach water. Plants die. Now add the human factor. Farmers see the crop dying, and what do? Plow deeper. Again and again. Every time the plow passes through the field, it turns the earth, destroys its structure, tears apart those few roots still holding soil together. Earth becomes loose, like flour. And when wind comes, and on the Great Plains wind blows almost constantly, this loose earth rises into the air. Literally flies away. In one dust storm, inches of fertile layer accumulated over millennia could disappear. That's exactly what happened to John. And to hundreds of thousands of other farmers. They got stuck in a vicious circle. Plowed the land, crop died, plowed again, earth became looser, wind carried it away, plowed even deeper, got even worse. But Frank took a different path. He planted plants with roots 3 feet deep. 6 feet. 10 feet. Alfalfa, its roots go down 10 feet deep. I'll repeat. 10 feet down. Imagine. That's the height of a one-story house, but underground. These roots break through hard soil layers, reach groundwater that doesn't dry up even in the worst drought. Sudan grass roots up to 6 feet. Clover 5 to 6 feet. Amaranth up to 8 feet. Jerusalem artichoke 10 feet and deeper. These plants survived not because they were magical. They survived because their roots reached water that shallow roots couldn't reach. But that's only half the story. The second half is even more important. These roots created a dense network underground. Imagine a spider web, only made of plant fibers, thick, intertwined, holding every particle of soil. When wind hit, when a dust storm started, this network didn't let the earth rise into the air. Top plants could die, they could be broken, covered with sand, but roots stayed alive. They held the soil. They preserved Earth's structure. And when the storm ended, these roots gave new shoots. Plants recovered. The cycle continued. Frank wasn't growing commodity wheat for sale. He was growing a system for survival. Food for family. Feed for livestock. And most importantly, protection for his land. Deep roots saved his farm. Literally saved it. Let's get more specific. What exactly did farmers who survived plant? Not abstractly, but with details, numbers, facts. Alfalfa. Perennial plant of the legume family. Roots up to 10 feet deep, sometimes up to 16 in ideal conditions. One planting gives harvest 5 to 7 years in a row. Alfalfa not only survived drought, it also enriched soil with nitrogen through nodule bacteria on roots. Farmers cut it 3 to 4 times per season for hay. 1 ton of dry alfalfa is feed for a cow for a month. A 2.5 acre plot gave 8 to 10 tons of hay in a good year, even 4 to 5 tons in a bad one. This meant a farmer could feed a small herd of cows all winter, meaning milk, butter, meat for family. Sudan grass. Annual plant from Africa, brought to the US. In the early 20th century. Roots up to 6 feet, but its main advantage is growth speed. In 60 to 70 days it grows to 5 feet tall even with minimal precipitation. Farmers cut it for green livestock feed in summer or dried it for hay. From 2.5 acres 5 to 7 tons of green mass per season. But Sudan did something else important. Its thick thickets covered soil, protecting from wind and sun. After cutting, its roots remained in the earth, continuing to hold soil together. Amaranth. Ancient plant that Aztecs and other native peoples grew for thousands of years. Roots deep, up to 8 feet. Leaves are edible, they are cooked like spinach. Seeds are nutritious, rich in protein, 14 to 18%, more than wheat. One amaranth bush 6 feet tall gives up to 2 pounds of grain. This grain can be boiled like porridge, ground into flour, baked into flatbreads. Farmers who planted amaranth got an alternative source of protein and carbohydrates when wheat died. Amaranth tolerates heat up to 113 degrees Fahrenheit and grows even when other crops surrender. Jerusalem artichoke, sunchoke. We already talked about it in the previous video, but I'll repeat. This is a tank plant. Roots 10 feet deep, tubers edible, caloric. One bush gives 4 to 7 pounds of tubers. Plant once it grows 20 to 30 years, reproduces itself. Tubers can be left in ground all winter and dug up as needed, they don't spoil. Jerusalem artichoke has 70 to 80 calories per 3.5 ounces, plus inulin, which is good for digestion. A family of 4 could plant 20 to 30 bushes on a 500 square foot plot and get 100 to 150 pounds of food every winter. Free. Without much effort. Sweet clover. Another nitrogen-fixing plant. Roots up to 6 feet. They planted it between rows of other crops or as cover crop. It protected soil, improved its structure, fed bees. Clover honey was one of few sources of sugar in those years. After cutting, clover was left on field as mulch. It rotted and returned organic matter to soil. Notice the pattern. All these plants are perennials or self-seeding annuals. They don't need replanting every year. Roots work constantly, hold soil, pump water from depth, enrich earth with nitrogen. And most important, these plants didn't just survive. They fed. Really fed families when there was hunger all around. Why did this strategy work when everything else failed? Let's dig into science and look at numbers. First reason. Access to water at depth. Soil scientists' research after the Dust Bowl showed. During the worst drought years, the top layer of soil for 20 to 28 inches was absolutely dry. Moisture less than 5%. Plants with shallow roots died inevitably. But at depth of 5 to 6 feet, moisture remained at 15 to 20% level. That's enough for plant survival. At depth of 10 feet and below 25 to 30% moisture, close to groundwater. Even in the worst years, this moisture didn't disappear. Plants with deep roots reached this water. They survived not by miracle, they survived by physics and biology. Second reason. Protection from erosion. Scientific measurements conducted in the 1930s showed shocking numbers. Fields plowed the traditional way lost 5 to 15 tons of soil per acre per one dust storm. In one day. This meant that in a season a field could lose the entire fertile layer accumulated over centuries. Fields covered with deep-rooted plants lost less than 1 ton per acre. Difference of 10 to 15 times. Why? Roots. 1 square yard of alfalfa contained up to 65 feet of roots, underground thin threads, intertwined with soil, holding every particle in place. Third reason. Fertility restoration. Alfalfa and clover are nitrogen fixers. They don't deplete soil like wheat. They enrich it. In one season, 2.5 acres of alfalfa adds 330 to 440 pounds of nitrogen to soil. That's equivalent to several tons of chemical fertilizer. Farmers using these plants not only saved their land, they improved it. After the drought ended, when rains returned in the 1940s, their fields recovered faster than any others. Soil was alive, fertile, ready to give harvest. Fourth reason. Dietary diversity and resilience. Farmers relying on one crop wheat lost everything when that crop died. Farmers growing 5 to 10 different crops always had at least something. Amaranth survived. There's porridge. Jerusalem artichoke gave tubers. There's carbohydrates. Alfalfa grew. There's feed for cows, meaning milk. Diversity is insurance. It's protection from complete failure. You might think, okay, that was 90 years ago. Now everything's different. We have technology, irrigation, science. What does this have to do with me? Here's what. Droughts haven't disappeared. They've returned. And they are worse than during the Dust Bowl. Western U.S. states are experiencing a megadrought, the strongest in the last 1,200 years. California, Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico. Water level in Lake Mead, the main reservoir for Las Vegas and Southern California, has fallen to historic lows. The Colorado River is drying up. Farmers are getting 20 to 30% less water for irrigation than 5 years ago. And what's happening? Harvests are falling. Soil is depleting from intensive farming. Trees are dying from lack of moisture. In California alone, more than 150 million trees have died over the last 10 years. Farmers again face the same problems. But most are trying to squeeze even more from a system that already doesn't work. More chemical fertilizer to compensate for depleted soil. More pesticides to protect weak plants from pests. More irrigation until water runs out completely. This is the same strategy as during the Dust Bowl. Let's do the same thing, but more intensively. We know how that ended then. Why do we think it'll be different now? And here's where hope appears. Some farmers are remembering lessons of the past. They are returning to deep-rooted crops. They are implementing regenerative agriculture methods that restore soil rather than deplete it. They are planting alfalfa, clover, cover crops. They are creating sustainable systems. And you know what? Their harvests are more stable. Their soil is healthier. They use less water and get better results. This isn't just about big farms. This is about you. Even if you have a small garden in your backyard, even if you just grow tomatoes on a balcony, you can use these principles. So, specifically, what can you do right now to apply these lessons? First, add deep-rooted plants to your garden. If you grow tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, great. But dedicate at least 10 to 20% of space to deep-rooted crops. Plant them along edges of beds, between rows of main crops, along fence. They won't take much space, but will do 3 important things. Improve soil, retain moisture, give additional harvest. Specific plan. If you have a 500 square foot garden, dedicate 50 to 100 square feet to alfalfa or clover. They are perennials. Plant once, and they'll work 5 to 7 years. Between tomato beds, plant a row of amaranth. It'll grow tall, won't interfere with tomatoes, will give grain harvest in fall. Second, try amaranth as insurance. Amaranth is one of the most resilient plants. It tolerates heat, drought, poor soil. Planted in April-May. Sow seeds shallow, half to 1 inch. Distance between plants 12 to 16 inches. Water at planting and then it grows almost by itself. By August-September you'll get tall plants with dense panicles full of seeds. Cut panicles, dry, thresh. You'll have grain rich in protein. Leaves can be picked all summer and cooked like spinach. 1 packet of amaranth seeds costs $2 to $3. It gives you several pounds of food. If main harvest dies from drought or heat, amaranth will survive. Third, plant Jerusalem artichoke at edge of plot. Find a place where Jerusalem artichoke won't interfere. It's tall, 6 to 10 feet, and aggressively spreads. Edge of garden, along fence, corner of plot. Buy tubers in spring, can get at garden center, can order online. Bury 4 inches deep, distance 3 feet apart. Water at planting. That's it. Then it grows itself. In fall, after first frosts, cut stems and start digging tubers. Leave a few in ground, they'll sprout in spring. Jerusalem artichoke is your long-term insurance. Plant once, 20 years of harvest. Fourth, stop digging soil deeply. Every time you dig earth a full spade depth, you destroy fungal networks, root networks, soil structure. Microorganisms die. Soil becomes loose, defenseless. Switch to surface loosening, only top 2 to 4 inches. Or try no-till method altogether, growing without digging. Make beds once, cover with thick layer of mulch, straw, leaves, grass. Each year add layer of compost on top. Roots of last year's plants remain in earth, creating channels for water and air. Soil becomes alive, structured, resilient. Fifth, mulch everything. Bare soil is dead soil. Nature doesn't like bare earth. Cover all beds with organic matter. Grass clippings, straw, fallen leaves, wood chips. Layer 2 to 4 inches. What does mulch give? It protects soil from wind and sun. Retains moisture under mulch. Earth stays moist 2 to 3 times longer. Prevents erosion. Suppresses weeds. As it decomposes, feeds soil with organic matter. Dust Bowl farmers who mulched their fields with alfalfa and grass remnants lost 5 to 10 times less soil during storms. 6th. Create windbreak. If you have an open plot, plant a hedge or row of tall plants on north and west sides. That's where strong winds blow from. Sunflowers, corn, Jerusalem artichoke, even tall perennial grasses. They'll reduce wind speed by 30 to 50%, protect tender plants, decrease moisture evaporation. These techniques saved farmers 90 years ago. They work today. They'll work tomorrow when droughts become even more frequent and severe. Let's return to our farmers. To John and Frank. To their fates. John Miller left for California in 1935. He joined the huge stream of refugees. They were called Okies, a derogatory abbreviation of Oklahomans, though they were from all Great Plains states. John found work on fruit plantations in Central Valley. 50 cents a day. From early morning till night under scorching sun. His wife and children worked beside him picking fruit, weeding beds. They lived in a tent camp with thousands of other families. No plumbing, no sewage. Diseases spread quickly. Diphtheria, dysentery, pneumonia. John's youngest son didn't survive the first winter. He was 4 years old. John never returned to his land. The bank took the farm for debts in 1936. Land his father bought, that his grandfather worked gone. John died in 1947 from pneumonia, working on other people's fields, never seeing his home again. Frank Anderson stayed. Did his family starve? No. Ate poorly, but steadily. Summer amaranth leaves, beans, squash from garden. Fall amaranth grain, dried alfalfa for tea. Winter Jerusalem artichoke, sauerkraut, milk from 2 cows he fed with alfalfa hay. His children were thin but healthy. They went to school. They didn't flee. They held onto their land. And when in 1940 to 1941 rains finally returned, Frank's farm recovered in 1 season. Soil was alive, full of roots, organic matter, microorganisms. He planted wheat again and got good harvest. His neighbors, those few who returned, restored their fields for years. Their land was dead, blown out, exhausted. In the 1950s, Frank became one of the wealthiest farmers in the county. Not because he was smarter or more hardworking. Because he survived the catastrophe, and most didn't. Difference between John and Frank. One tried to control nature. The other worked with it. One clung to a system that stopped working. The other adapted. One thought short-term, how to save this year's harvest, how to earn money now. The other thought long-term, how to preserve land, how to provide for family for decades ahead. Today we stand at the threshold again. Climate is changing faster than we're ready to admit. Droughts are becoming more frequent. Dust storms are returning in 2022. A series of storms covered Kansas and Oklahoma, exactly like in the 1930s. Food systems are becoming fragile. One pandemic, one logistics failure, and shelves empty. Question isn't whether crisis will happen. Question is when. And when it does, will you be John or Frank? The Dust Bowl story isn't just a history lesson for school children. It's a warning. It's an instruction manual. It's a map of what happens when people forget to work with nature and try to subdue it. When farmers plowed the Great Plains in the early 20th century, turning endless prairies into wheat fields, they thought they'd conquered the land. They thought technology, tractors, plows, fertilizers would let them do anything, and earth would endure. They thought rains would come always. They were wrong. Brutally wrong. Nature answered with a decade of dust storms, drought, and hunger. And those who didn't listen, who kept doing the same thing hoping for different results, they paid for it with everything. Their homes. Their farms. Sometimes their lives. But those who understood, who planted deep roots, who created diversity, who worked with earth rather than against it, they survived. They preserved their families, their farms, their future. They proved you can survive even in worst conditions if you understand how nature works. Deep roots. It's a metaphor, but it's also literal truth. If you want to survive unstable times, you need to go deep with roots. Not rely on surface solutions. Not hope that the system will always save you. Build resilience from bottom up. Create reserves. Develop skills. Plant plants that will outlive crisis. Plant alfalfa. Plant amaranth. Plant Jerusalem artichoke. These aren't just vegetables and grasses. This is insurance. This is Plan B. This is what worked when everything else collapsed. This is what can save you when your Black Sunday comes. Write in comments. What deep-rooted plant will you plant this season? Alfalfa? Amaranth? Jerusalem artichoke? Or something else? Share your plan. And if you want more stories about how people survived in extreme conditions, how they adapted and won, let me know. I'll keep digging. Literally and figuratively. Thank you for watching to the end. Remember the main thing. The strongest don't survive. Not the richest. The most deeply rooted survive. Those who understand the land. Those who work with nature, not against it. See you in the next video.